Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today we have a guest with us, Andrea Nicholson, and we're going to dig into a bit of her health journey, experiences that she's had, and she has a really interesting background that will be a fun conversation to share. So, really excited to jump in with you, Andrea.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Amazing. So, from your personal journey, can you walk us through some key moments that you had from following mainstream health advice to becoming your own health investigator?
Yeah, so my story, I've always known, even from as a little kid, that heart disease was a big thing in my family. Thankfully, I was adopted as an infant because I would have been orphaned at 15 when my entire birth family all had died from heart disease. So that was
Wow.
always kind of in the back of my mind as something that I needed to be aware of. But I thought I was pretty healthy, pretty, doing the things. I liked vegetables. I liked reasonably healthy foods. I mean, I certainly had my fair share of junk and things that we all have, but I thought I was pretty healthy. I was never obese, any of those things. But fast forward to my 20s, I I had the opportunity to go through some cardiovascular testing through my employer at the time,
Mhm.
and where they did the carotid scans and they did EKGs and they did the NMR lipid profiles and like just higher level stuff than you normally would get from your regular GP cholesterol panel kind of stuff. And I never could get any doctors to take me seriously because I was in my 20s and they were like, "You're fine. You're not obese. You don't smoke. You're good." Well, I did this testing and found that I actually did have heart disease developing already in my 20s.
Wow.
They saw plaque. My arterial walls were thickening, which is an indication that they're accumulating plaque on the insides. The arterial age was considered to be, at the time, 4 years older than my chronological age. I had all the wrong particle sizes and particle types and like all the things. It was just terrible news. And I'm like, okay, this is not good. And they really couldn't tell me anything. It didn't rise to the level of like, you need a statin or you need, some kind of drug, but they were like, yeah, this isn't trending in a good direction, but they couldn't really
Mhm.
tell me what to do. Eat a heart healthy diet, exercise, don't smoke. Like, yay, I'm already doing all those things. So
Mhm.
that wasn't helpful, but I did what I could do. I like increased my whole greens, I increased my vegetables, I decreased my fat intake, cut all the saturated fat, started doing 2 workouts a day. Like I did everything I could do. Went back a year later, did the same exact cardiovascular panel again, and it was all worse.
Wow.
My arterial age went from 4 years older to 11 years older in
Oh my
one
goodness.
year. All the wrong particle sizes, inflammation off the charts, just all the things went the wrong direction. And that's when I was like, okay, well, clearly conventional medicine is not helping me. And so I started doing my own research, ended up finding, functional medicine really, which wasn't all that common 20 years ago, wasn't
Mhm.
a term people really talked about. But there were some people on the fringe that were really talking more about true holistic practices and proper foods and pretty much the opposite of everything we'd been told with all the
Yeah.
healthy whole grains and low fat diets and all the things. So that's
Amazing.
what started me.
You mentioned transitioning through different diets and especially like low fat. What are the most surprising discoveries going through that process that you discovered? Like what came up for you?
Yeah, for me, the biggest things were obviously we need healthy fats. Fats are
Mhm.
not the villain. We need them in our lives. There's a reason why throughout all of human history we've eaten fats, animal fats, plant fats, all the things. There's a reason. There's a reason our body makes fat.
Yeah.
Like this is a natural thing. And I was so low fat that I was messing up my hormones and I
Mhm.
was, having brain fog and all the things. Our brain is a huge portion of it is fat. We need this. We also can't absorb fat soluble vitamins if you're not eating fat. So I had super low vitamin D. I had all kinds of nutritional deficiencies. And so that was a big one. The second one was the whole mystery around whole grains and how that really wasn't serving me at all. That those are very high glycemic. They
Mhm.
really don't provide all that much nutrition. They're actually pretty high calorie for being relatively not satiating and not all that helpful. And I was eating all of this amazing fiber between the whole grains and all the vegetables, and yet chronically constipated had been my entire life. Didn't even know that was a thing. That was one of the things I uncovered in my education was, oh, this isn't normal. Yeah, no, it's not. So, but despite all that fiber, it was actually not serving me. So when I went and did stool testing, I actually had basically no microbiome, even
Wow.
though I was taking in all this amazing
Wow.
plant-based food, because I had at that point transitioned fully plant-based, thinking that was going to be the best option and the
Hmm.
healthiest, and all the plants.
Mhm.
But I had like no good bacteria. I had several pathogens. I mean, just all the things. So basically, all of the changes I had made were the wrong ones to make.
Yeah. And those are the ones that are so commonly recommended, especially the
Yeah.
plant-based thing right now. And cholesterol is something that's feared as well. It's like the body makes cholesterol.
Right.
Would the body make something that was going to kill you? Right?
Right.
And as you said, without fat, we can't make hormones. We can't make integrity of cells is not able to be reproduced. And there's so many different things. And yeah, the low fat, I mean, I'm an 80s baby. The low fat phase was a thing where fat makes you fat. And it's like, no, you can't reproduce your brain. Why is breast milk so high in
Right.
fast fat concentration if it's bad for us?
Yep.
So, in terms of like what changes have you made now from the plant-based way of eating?
Yeah. So I am not like fully carnivore. I still love vegetables. I still love plant foods, but I'm far more on the carnivore end of the spectrum now. There are days I don't actually get any plant foods.
Mhm.
So I'm definitely more on the animal protein side of things. I do happen to enjoy some vegetables and some fruits, so I do still have them once in a while just because I
Mhm.
love them, not because I think they're necessary or required for life, but I do think I like them, so I still have them. So I've added back basically all the animal proteins. I took out all the grains,
Mhm.
including not just gluten, but all the grains. So I don't really do corn. I don't really do oats. I don't really do, quinoa or any of these kinds of things. Pretty
Mhm.
much it's meat and vegetables is the bulk of my diet. And even the vegetables primarily are the non-starchy ones, not so much with the potatoes and, rice and all of those kinds of things. So yeah, pretty much the opposite of what I had been doing.
And with making that transition, how long did it take for you to notice a difference in your health?
You know, I was, I, this is the hard part for I think a lot of people, and it was for me too. I felt really good actually on the plant-based diet. I never
Mhm.
like felt all that bad, or at least for a while. Eventually, I did get to the point where the inflammation
Mhm.
was accumulating and I was chronically stiff and sore even when I wasn't working out. I was tired all the time. Like eventually it did catch up to me, but I
Mhm.
actually felt really pretty good, especially in the early days of that. So in the transition, I transitioned pretty slowly. I didn't just like flip the switch and all of a
Mhm.
sudden kind of go to the opposite end of the spectrum and all carnivore. I started kind of adding things in slowly, which I think is smart. If you're going to make that big of a change, I think going at it slowly is good because that is a major switch to your microbiome, to
Sure.
your digestive enzyme output, to all of the things to go from entirely plants to mostly animals. It's a different process.
Mhm.
Part of my gut health issue also had been low stomach acid, and you really need
Yes.
good stomach acid to digest proteins.
Right. Yeah.
And so had I just dove into the deep end, that probably wouldn't have gone very well for the first few weeks. So I do recommend if you're going to make a major change, go at it slowly. And so it took me probably 6 months ish to fully make the transition in total. But yeah, I felt amazing and I could see it. I was using a continuous glucose monitor at the time, so I could really see
Perfect.
what it was doing to my blood sugars. I could see foods that I thought were amazing, like oatmeal. I thought was
Mhm.
amazing.
Hmm.
Not so much when it comes to blood sugar. It's really not. It's actually pretty terrible for your blood sugar in most cases. And I tried lots of combinations because I
Yeah.
loved my oatmeal and I never could find anything that didn't cause a humongous spike. So I utilized a lot of those tools to make sure I really was on the right track.
Mhm.
And so I wasn't just basing my decisions on like literally how I felt. Of course, that was something I was paying attention to. And
Hmm.
anything that didn't make me feel great, I didn't continue with. But anything else, I was also using a lot of other metrics to make sure. I mean,
Mhm.
we feel great eating cupcakes, but they're not actually serving us. So
In the short
Right.
term.
I do think we need to pay attention to other metrics sometimes too, and not just based on preferences and how it makes us feel in the moment.
Yeah. Was anything from your background as a crime scene investigator, was any part of that involved in uncovering what was going on with your health?
It was. I credit having those skills for really helping me get to the bottom of it, because it would have been really easy to just say, well, here's what all the doctors are saying, and they're
Mhm.
telling me that heart disease is genetic. And I could have just sat back and said, okay, well, I guess I'm going to go down that same path.
Mhm.
But I had the scientific background from my degrees and education in that. I had taken lots of biology and cell biology and biochemistry and all the things. So I had kind of a foundational scientific background to begin with. And then the investigative skills, I think, really helped me to discern, what was real and what wasn't, and what made sense, and looking at appropriate testing and not doing other kinds of tests. And I did a bunch of tests that ended up not being all that helpful, and then
Mhm.
figuring out the ones that really were actually helpful. So I think having those investigative skills really did help me in researching different foods, researching food history, the things we've eaten as a human species forever that we've been told for the last 50 years are killing us,
Yep.
but the things that we ate forever. So it's just, we have to stop and actually look at these things more holistically.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Just since we're on the topic of your history in investigative skills, how did you transition from doing that to what you're doing now? I'm sure
Yeah,
everyone's wondering.
it was a wild ride for sure. So I worked in that career for 15 years. And throughout that whole time, I was on my own journey and learning and testing, using myself as the guinea pig. And then eventually I got to a point just in my personal life that I wanted to make a change. And I just loved this stuff. I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to learn more about, individual nutrients and supplements and rating protocols and interpreting labs. And, I really wanted to a lot for myself. I just wanted to have that level of knowledge that I never had to outsource to a doctor again if I didn't want to. I wanted to have all of the information for myself, that I could be empowered to do whatever I wanted. I could order my own labs. I could interpret my own labs. I could write my own protocols. So initially, it kind of was for me. I wanted to go back to school and learn all the things for me. And it kind of just became a passion. And I had lots of other people asking, my doctor's telling me I need all these meds, or my doctor's telling me I need this, or my doctor's telling me food doesn't matter, or I can't change this. This is just my fate. And it's just
Mhm.
chronic and progressive, and it's going to get worse. And people just didn't like that information. And they want someone who will give them hope that there's something they can do. And there is something they can do.
Absolutely.
I firmly believe that every condition can, at a minimum, be improved upon, if not, in a lot of cases, fully reversed.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it is nice for people to know that there is someone they can talk to who is going to help. It's empowering yourself, right?
Mhm.
And realizing that just because the white coat says to you, like, there's nothing else you can do, you just need to take this medication. Your life is just going to continue to decline, and just kind of accept it. And to know that there are people, I mean, that's what we do as well. It's telling people, like, there are other things you can do. And it's empowering and it's amazing. And in terms of that, so you took things into your own hands and started looking, researching, digging into things. Have you noticed a difference in the cardiovascular health side of things?
Yeah, so I ended up going through my own protocol, all the testing, all the things, figured out I had the gut issue, figured out I had the nutritional deficiencies, kind of assessed, I had early stages of insulin resistance, I had all those things. So once I knew what I was facing, then I could actually start tackling it. And that's when I went through that whole protocol. Took me a couple years. I then went back and did that same panel again a
Hmm.
few years later, after eliminating the constipation, fixing the digestive issues, fixing the insulin resistance, eating a more well-rounded diet, not over exercising, like all the things. Went back, did the test again, and all of it was fully reversed. My arterial age was younger
Fantastic.
than my chronological age. All the particle sizes were fixed. All the inflammation was gone. Like everything was gone. So symptomatically, everything was gone. And also I could prove it on the labs that I no longer had insulin resistance. I no longer had cholesterol issues, no longer had visible plaques. Like all the things were gone.
That's amazing. And it's a thing that, again, it's like, this is just, you just have to live with this. This is how things are. You need to go low fat. You need to go on a statin, which is
Mhm.
horrible to so many different things. Like,
Yep.
we need cholesterol. We've already talked about this. When you don't have that, dementia? What comes when there's not enough fat and cholesterol in the brain? And all kinds of other things down the road as well, right?
Yep.
So that's amazing.
When you're working with clients, how is working with you as an insulin investigator? How is it different versus conventional?
Pretty much entirely different. Much like my journey, it's all the same stuff I'm going to help my clients with. So we're going to assess what real food really is. We're going to assess how to figure out the proper schedule of eating. We're going to talk about, food frequencies. We're going to talk about eating order. We're going to talk about sleep and stress and appropriate strategic supplements that might be helpful. And ultimately, even trying to get off of those. The goal is not to replace medications with supplements, but to get your body actually doing what it's supposed to do by giving it appropriate nutrition, by giving it appropriate lifestyle, by not giving it things that are causing disease. So let's get your body actually working appropriately and try to get off of even supplements as much as you can. There may be some you need to stay on long term. Some of us have genetic issues and we need more B vitamins or more D or, whatever that is. Some things you do need to stay on long term, but the goal is always to get off of everything and just have your body work appropriately.
Yeah, and I agree with that too because it's the perspective of okay, these natural supplements, I'm doing something natural now, at least there's no side effects. Okay, yes, that does have a benefit to it, but if you're still chasing symptoms and not dealing with what's causing the symptoms, it's not really that much better, right?
Right.
So that's great. The goal is to get you to the point where you use supplements as a guide and as support while you heal the things under the surface. So the
Yes.
body can function how it's supposed to, and you can be healthy and happy and all those fun things, right? For the rest of
Yes.
your life,
Yep.
ideally. What are some common signs of insulin-related challenges that people often overlook?
Well, I think a lot of people don't realize that insulin is kind of at the root of their issues. Most of us know, like, well, I just can't lose the weight, or I have this extra belly fat, or I have
Yeah.
like the whatever the physical signs are, but they don't necessarily know that insulin can be a major driver behind that. So I think, first of all, just kind of looking at the body. So extra weight, extra belly fat, extra just stubborn fat in general
Mhm.
can be a common thing to look for when it comes to insulin. Of course, if you have any blood sugar issues, if you have hypoglycemia, if you get a lot of sugar cravings, if you feel like you crash after you eat, any of those kinds of things can also be signs. And then there's things like skin tags and, dark skin patches on the back of your neck or in your armpits or those kinds of things. There's lots of different physical signs like that, but it can also be hypertension. It can be
Yeah.
heart disease, any of those kinds of signs, high triglycerides, low HDL. All of these kinds of things can also be directly related to high levels of insulin and insulin resistance.
Interesting. Do statins increase the likelihood of insulin resistance?
They do. In a lot of cases, they are one of the main drivers for increasing the risk of diabetes. Heart disease, obviously, the number one driver of heart disease is diabetes. And so it seems like it would make sense to reduce your heart disease risk with a statin, but it actually does increase the risk of insulin resistance. So it's a little double-edged sword.
Is there a certain success story around that you would like to share that really changed someone's life and their outcome with their health?
Yeah, I have one client who I just love sharing his story because it's so powerful. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes over 20 years ago, and basically was on that conventional path. He took basically every diabetes drug there was, including
Mhm.
insulin. They just kept switching things up and adding more and more. And he's a lot like I am and was doing his own research. And he's like, well, you have me on insulin, but I have high insulin already. Like the logic didn't make any sense to him. And his doctors just completely discounted everything he said, told him diet didn't matter. In fact, if his blood sugar was even down to 100 before eating, that he should increase his carbohydrate dose and then just cover that with insulin, take even more insulin, like
Wow.
all the things, all his research. So he just ultimately got fed up, fired his entire medical team, actually even canceled his entire insurance plan
Wow.
and just walked away from the entire system, basically medically retired because he was morbidly obese, was so stiff and sore and just unable to really do much physically.
Mhm.
But through his own research, he knew nutrition really mattered. He actually, before I even knew him, he weaned himself off of all of the medications. He got off of every single thing, ultimately went carnivore on
Mhm.
his own. He lost like 40 or 50 pounds and then kind of hit a plateau. And that's when he came to see me. He found me on a low carb website and figured I wouldn't talk him out of the carnivore plan. And so we started working together and found that he was still eating just too much in general, even though it was all great quality food. His portion size was like 3 times what he thought it was.
Mhm.
And so even with just protein only, just animal proteins, he still had really high insulin levels. He had super high inflammation. Just all the markers were still really, really high.
Hmm.
And we didn't really have some of those markers from his previous days with the conventional medicine because they don't run fasting insulin and they don't
Nope.
run a lot of the markers that we run. So we only really had that baseline when we started working together, but his insulin was like a 50, and we want it 2 to 6. So it was just astronomical. His inflammation was like double digits,
Jeez.
just really high levels of bad things. And it took a while to kind of figure out the sweet spot for him between the, fattier cuts or the leaner cuts and the portion sizes and all the things. And he had been diabetic for 20 years. So this is not the kind of thing that's going to turn around in, 90 days, but it was slowly coming down. Today, he is actually not even considered pre-diabetic anymore. His numbers
Amazing.
are back in the normal range. They're still not quite to the perfect ideal, 5.3 A1C and perfect insulin, but his insulin is now down to 13
Wow.
from over 50.
Huge.
Yeah, his
Huge.
inflammation marker is down to like 1.5, so way better. He's actually even back to working full time, and he has a physical job where he's going up and down a 4-story building all day long. He's carrying heavy tables. He's like super physically active now from being medically retired
Mhm.
and fully type 2 diabetic to no longer diabetic. And now he's down like 90 pounds, I think, altogether. And yeah, just absolutely amazing turnaround.
That's incredible.
Crazy. That's a sign of someone who's like, nope, I'm going to take charge and I'm going to do
Yep.
something different.
Yep.
Right. And that's, I mean, we both have been eating carnivore since January of this year and did it a couple of years ago as well. And my inflammation was a big thing that I was looking to address because I have a history of MS diagnosis. And I was like, no, there's got to be a different way. And
Yep.
carnivore was the thing that got rid of the last of my symptoms. So
Yeah.
it's so exciting to hear of other people who are helping people with a carnivore strategy because that's the first
Mhm.
thing that people say is like, "Ooh, what's your cholesterol like?" And you're going to end up
Yep.
with heart disease, but it's like it's actually not true.
No.
But medicine doesn't understand it, right?
Right. Yep.
Um, so what was I going to ask you? How do you help clients move past the fear of deviating from mainstream medical advice?
Thankfully, I have not had to really, convince anybody of anything. People come to me because that is what they're already looking
Mhm.
for. And so they're already ready to do something different. They already don't like the information they've been given by their medical
Mhm.
providers or their, whoever's in kind of that conventional mindset. And so they're already kind of in that mode of like, give me something different, give me something I can control and something I can actually implement. So I
Perfect.
haven't really had to, talk people into it too much. I have worked with a couple people who, they frankly just didn't get that great of results because they straddled that line.
Mhm.
More so on the gut health side of things. I have had a
Mhm.
couple clients who like took our stool test results to their doctor and ended up like going the antibiotic route instead of
Mhm.
the, herbal protocol route. And frankly, they didn't get any better. Their doctors either completely discounted everything we did, or they ran their own test that came out different. And so that, the people that are kind of straddling that line tend to not go all in on the things they actually have control over. And so that becomes a little bit more difficult. And frankly, I just haven't seen it work all that well. And not that
Mhm.
it necessarily needs to be an either or. There's
Mhm.
100% a time and a place for conventional medicine.
Yep.
We need both sides of it. This is not to
Absolutely.
be anti-conventional medicine. There is an absolute time for antibiotics, for surgeries, for medications, for lots of things. This is absolutely not an never go see your doctor opinion ever again. But in a lot of ways, the two different methods are conflicting. And so you do
Mhm.
kind of have to pick a path
Mhm.
because you're only going to get so far on a medication if you don't truly need it. If there's another alternative in place of a medication, my personal opinion is I would rather do something more natural. Just so many of these medications with the side effects and all the issues, they just really can hold you back from real healing. And so I think getting off of anything unnecessary or not starting something that's truly not necessary, try everything you can before you go on medications. And then it just seems like it goes much faster.
Yeah. And I mean, the medical doctors, you're bringing them stuff that they don't know, they don't understand, and
Right.
they don't know how to work with. And that the only way, it's not their fault. They're trained
Yeah.
that find a medication to help this
Mhm.
person.
Yep.
And so they don't know what to do with it. And I totally agree. I think we both do that essentially like medicine does have a purpose and
Mhm.
but it's meant for emergencies. And we're in a society now where like everyone is go, 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 go all the time. So you get sick and you need it fixed now because you
Mhm.
want to continue with your crazy busy life. And it's like that's where medicine has become the answer for everything, not
Yep.
just for if there's an emergency. And for anything chronic, it's not fixing the problem,
No,
it's a
if
band-aid.
anything, it's making it worse.
Oh yeah. On that note, as far as any of the pervasive myths that come from conventional medicine, I know we kind of touched on the cholesterol one already. Are there others that you've encountered through your work? And how do you, maybe the people who are coming to you have already learned about the stuff already, but what are they, for the people listening, what are the ones that you notice the most?
Yeah, the most things that I get from conventional medicine, the people that are asking questions are things like my doctor told me diet doesn't matter,
Mhm.
or supplements are totally unregulated and so they're dangerous,
Yep.
where pharmaceuticals are very tightly regulated, therefore they're safer. Okay, well, that's an interesting argument that I don't fully agree with at all. So I think there's a lot of those kinds of things. I also think there's a lot of people think that their doctors are running really comprehensive labs,
Mhm.
and they're not.
Mhm.
I've yet to have a client really come to me from a conventional GP with a lab report that actually addressed a fraction of what it really should be looking at. They're running a CBC and a comprehensive metabolic panel and calling that a comprehensive panel. And it's really not. It's not looking at thyroid or iron status or, so many other vitamin D, a full cholesterol profile. Like
Yep.
it's not looking at
Yeah.
insulin. It's not looking at a lot of things that it really should be looking at. But again, that's not what these doctors are trained in.
Mhm.
Like fasting insulin, a lot of doctors will just flat refuse to run that because there's no medication they can give you to lower insulin.
Yeah.
They can give you a lot for blood sugar, but they can't give
Mhm.
you anything for insulin.
Insulin.
They can
Yeah.
only give you insulin, which will make it even higher. So there's nothing they can really do. So there's a lot of these kinds of markers that they don't want to look at. And it's not just the doctors, it's the insurance companies, it's lots
Mhm.
of other factors playing in. This isn't like your doctor's out for you and doesn't want you to know what's going on with your health.
Yeah,
They have the best of intentions, but they're also hamstrung by the system.
Mhm.
I actually heard about
absolutely.
a doctor's office that was running some of these extra things. And when their insurance model came in and audited their clinic,
Yep.
they got like a $90,000 bill because the insurance company deemed that they had been paying for things that weren't medically necessary. And so the doctor got billed for it like 5 years later.
Brutal.
And so these doctors are actually in a terrible position where they can't even do what they want to do for their patients if it's not considered standard of care.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's just really sad that none of that is in the patient's best interest. Even
Mhm.
if the patient's willing to pay for it, a lot of these doctors they're like, nope,
Just,
it's not worth the risk.
wow.
Yeah. And yeah, they have to medically justify it.
Yep.
Every test that they run. It's like I mean, I remember going to my doctor and I was like, there's something going on with my thyroid. I know there is. And she's like, okay, I'll run your TSH. And I was like, no, but that's not even a thyroid hormone.
It's not.
Like the pituitary. Like there needs to be deeper testing here and
Yep.
just like, no, 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 I'm not going to do that. I've also heard that like if something does come up, they have to follow up with it or
Right.
on it. And if they don't know what to do, then
Right.
that's a problem too,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So from a like a holistic perspective, what strategies do you find that are the most effective for managing like insulin related stuff with clients? We talked about diet with your client
Mhm.
that you shared the success story, but are there other things as well?
Yeah, diet, of course, is going to be the biggest driver. But of course, all of the other lifestyle factors still play in. So we still need to be moving our bodies every day. We don't need to be overtraining because that's actually a stressor. And stress is obviously a big driver of all the disease processes as well,
Mhm.
dysregulating your immune system and hormones and all the things. So stress is a big one. Not getting enough sleep and not getting good quality sleep is huge. And it's so pervasive in our go society, in our, 1,000 things to do, and we never sit down and rest. And even our rest, people think watching TV is restful. It's
Yep.
not restful. Your brain is still active. Especially if you're watching a mystery or a, crime drama or any of these
Yep.
kinds of things, your brain perceives that you are in that situation. That's not calming. That's not relaxing. That's not getting you into parasympathetic state. You're actually adding stress by, the things you watch, the things you listen to, the news programs that you're listening to, like all of those kinds of things. So I think we really have to look at all of the aspects of our lives. Are we drinking good, clean, filtered water? Are we, taking in a lot of preservatives? Are we eating vegetable oils? Are we overloading on sugar? Are we binging negative things that put junk in our heads?
Yeah.
Are we, surrounded by other toxins? Are we burning candles and using air fresheners and, laundry
Sunscreen.
detergents and just all the things? I think we really do have to look at our overall lives and find all of these sources of things that are actually contributing to the problem.
Yeah, there's so many things that you can just start working away at it and just
Yep.
pick one thing and slowly layer in. So
Exactly.
it's so easy to get overwhelmed because there are so many things, but just
Yeah.
start with one thing.
Yep. When you're replacing your products, just upgrade them, buy better
Yeah.
things next time. You don't have to go through your house and throw everything away at once.
Mm.
But when you run out of something, buy something better next time.
Yeah. It's so simple to do that way.
Yeah.
So as far as your current journey and how you're making an impact with the health community, what is your future goals? How do you want to make things even better for people out there?
I think just collectively, all of us that are in this field and on this mission, we're just trying to raise the awareness level. I think there's a whole population of people who don't even know it's possible, that we still need to reach. We still need to get a hold of them and let them know that conventional medicine isn't the only option. There's a lot of other things that you have control over. You don't need to outsource your education to your doctor. You don't need to outsource all of your decision making to them. You actually can do a lot, and you're going to get farther by doing the things that you have control over, like the food you eat, like the exercise you get, like the sleep quality and time and all of those things. You're going to get farther in your journey by focusing on those things than you'll ever get by waiting for your doctor to tell you what to do. And so I think part of the mission is just to reach new people, to open their eyes, to show them a new way, to, giving them some information that they can get started with, which is why I love these podcasts and, social media, when it's used appropriately, can really open people's eyes.
Yeah. And I think with that, actually giving the power back to them so they can decide rather than being told, this is how your life's going to be. This is the only way you can do something.
Yeah.
And having that self responsibility is really huge in our journeys.
And I think even just the language we use around things, like I see so many people that are like, my doctor put me on this medication. Your doctor can't make you take anything.
Yes.
Nobody's making you eat certain foods or do certain things or take certain meds or undergo procedures. You actually are in control. And I think so many people have just kind of given that away, that if their doctor tells them to do something or writes a prescription, they have to fill it.
Right.
You don't. I've been given lots of antibiotic prescriptions over the years and not taken them. I had my wisdom teeth out years ago and they gave me codeine so I could sleep. And I'm like, I don't need a narcotic. I'm good. So I think just even the mindset and the language we use around these things is really important. That my doctor recommended that I take this medication or do this procedure or make this change. I'm still in control. I get to decide what I actually do implement or not.
I think that's amazing and powerful alone to know. Like, I remember growing up and the belief that was instilled in me from a young age, and we see this with clients all the time, is that like you don't argue with your doctor. Your doctor is the be all end all, and whatever they say, you just do it. And it's true when you decide to say, okay, well, thank you for that recommendation. I'm going to go and do a little bit of research. Actually, probably don't say that to your doctor because the response is not usually all that positive, but you do have the opportunity to go and see, okay, is this what I want to do? And so I think that's a really powerful message to share with people. as well, especially when there's something like we're always trying to share. We had a woman was talking about breast cancer. Her episode goes live this week, and just from the perspective of when you're first diagnosed, there's so much fear
Mhm.
instilled that the standard of care is chemotherapy, radiation, and tamoxifen. And it's like, okay, well, what are there other ways? And when you're in that place of fear, it's hard to make different decisions. And
But
so sharing this information with people and having them have the opportunity to kind of get a feel for it before there's an issue can make a difference when it comes to making a decision.
yep.
So I think that's amazing to share. And you've already dropped a really good nugget, but if you could give one piece of advice to our listeners who are struggling with their health or looking to do something different, what would that be?
I would say pause and take a breath to begin with. Outside of true medical emergencies, you have time to do research. These things don't need to be implemented today.
Mhm.
You have time. You can
Mhm.
do your research. And, I want to just add on, just like we said, you don't have to take your doctor's advice. The same is true for the things you hear from us too.
Yep.
Mhm. Yep.
You get to decide all the things. No one's going to make you eat hamburger if you don't want to. No one's going to make you eat broccoli if you don't want to. You get to decide the good things, the bad things, the things you implement, the things you don't. So take a breath, do some research, figure out a path that works for you, and just keep hope. There's always going to be answers out there. You may have to talk to lots of people. You may have to get several opinions. You may have to try lots of different things. Carnivore might be the thing for you, maybe not. Maybe
Mhm.
you actually enjoy vegetables like I do, and so you still eat them. Like you might have to be willing to try a few things, but just keep advocating for yourself. Keep looking for answers, keep trying things, keep researching. There's answers out there.
Yeah. And when something's not fit for you, going through the process of here's this medication, it's like, this doesn't quite feel right. My body's like, no, I don't want this.
Yeah.
Listen to yourself, follow
Yep.
your gut, and keep looking for answers.
Yeah. And be patient with it. You're not going to try a diet today and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, this saved my
Yes.
life. Like, be patient, give your body a chance to adapt to the changes you're making before you jump to the next thing and jump to the next thing. Be patient with it, give
For
it some
sure.
time.
Yeah, I
It'll work.
100% agree with that. And we're often looking for something to fix it right away. And we've heard that too. It's like, oh, I tried that, but it didn't work for me. And it's like, maybe it did, but you just didn't give it long enough time
Mhm.
for it to show you the difference. Like you can't wake up and say like, hey, liver, how you doing today?
Right.
There may be changes happening that just it hasn't revealed itself yet because you haven't given it enough time. And so yeah, I totally agree with that. Patience when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to any holistic changes, it's not something that's going to happen overnight for the
Mhm.
Yeah.
most part. But I mean, at the end of the day, is it worth it? Like if you're making nutrition changes, even if you're still on medication or whatever you're doing, how can it be a bad thing to
Right.
make changes to your diet, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Even
yeah,
if you don't feel any different, it is doing good things for you to give your body good things.
exactly.
All right. So if anyone's looking to connect with you or work with you, where is the best place to find you?
The best place is my website, healthylifewithandrea.com. From there, you can link to all the other things.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We've loved hearing your stories and all the many ways you're helping people change their lives, because that's really what it is. They're like going from basically being sick, and for your one success story where someone wasn't able to live life and then going back into working and enjoying their life again is
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing all your stories. We really appreciate having you on today.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast having this conversation.
right on. Thanks everyone for listening to this episode. We look forward to catching you next week on whatever follows next. Have a great week.